First meeting of the Committee of the Whole of City Council of the City of Beaumont. And as usual, I will start with the land acknowledgement. We are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. As we gather here in the traditional Treaty 6 territory, we acknowledge that we are all treaty people and have ongoing responsibilities to protect and honor all of life. Again, I'd like to welcome you here and to let you know that we are missing 2 members of council, but they are en route, so we expect them to be here momentarily. And also that we're wearing pink in honor of Anti-Bullying Day, which is tomorrow. And wanted to make sure that we all honored that day because it's a very important day, something to keep in mind all of the time, and we do. So without any further ado, the adoption of the agenda. Is there a member of council willing to make a motion to approve the agenda? Okay, hang on. There's something that I'm missing here. I know it. There it is. Okay, Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask members to vote then, please, on the agenda. And that is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And we're moving to the next item on the agenda is the adoption of minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting on January the 17th. Is there a member of the committee who's willing to make a motion to approve those minutes? Councillor Miller.
Sure, I move that the January 17th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Thank you very much. There are no other comments. Please vote. Oh, excuse me.
You are correct.
Good catch. Thank you. Yeah, good catch. No, that's why we put them up there. I just wanted to see if you were awake, but thank you. Thank you very much. Well, there you go. So with that change, Councillor Miller, you're okay with
I'm
with
okay
the
with that.
change. Thank you. And Councillor Van Newkirk has joined us, and I believe you're signed in now, Councillor. So please vote then on the amended motion. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so there you go. Next item on the agenda is our first presentation for this evening, of which there are 5. So the first one coming up, Ms. Bujaya, I believe you are first up with an overview of the draft council committee bylaw. Council committee's bylaw. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Committee of the Whole. I'm going to admit I feel very odd presenting up here. It's a first for me, so bear with me. I'm going to try and get myself in order. So I'm Sandy Bajaya. I'm the Director of Legal and Legislative Services, and it is my pleasure to bring this report to the Committee of the Whole. As we discussed at the last Committee of the Whole meeting, administration is working with council to review council committees and related processes. The review will be done in phases over the course of 2023. Detailed information on the phases is included on the first page of the report in your agenda package. For today, however, we're going to be turning our attention to the draft council committee bylaw, which is included as attachment 1 of the report. Oh, and the technology is failing me. Could you advance the slide, Stacy, please? Thank you. Okay. So the bylaw, the draft bylaw, provides an overarching governance structure for council committees, and this includes a number of issues. So things like the type of council committees that may be established, and this would of course be by council, membership, meetings, procedures, and general expectations for council committees, respective role and responsibilities of all the parties that make up council committees. So whether that be the councillor appointees, the committee members, typically members of the public, and members of administration who support the committees. Reporting requirements for council committees, and the code of conduct for members of council committees. So that's a brief overview of what the bylaw covers. Next slide, please. So the next few slides sets out the main components in each of the bylaw key sections. I'm going to start with part 2 of the bylaw because the first part just deals with the definitions and just the sort of introductory matter. You will see the provisions related to establishment and membership on the screen. This part of the bylaw addresses fundamental committee matters, including things like term length, number of terms, residency requirements for public members, appointments of alternates for council members, resignations, etc. So just setting out what to do in all those matters. The bylaw also delineates the types of council committees. And you'll see that in the bylaw, there are 3 types. There's advisory committees, which are the council committees that we're most familiar with at Beaumont. Those are the ones that are ongoing that provide advice to council. There are task forces, which would be a council committee with a very sort of focused mandate and would typically have a shorter shelf life. So they might meet for 6 to 18 months, depending on the topic. And then there's what we call governance committees, and they're a little bit different. Those are composed mainly of just councillors, so they don't have public members. Right now, we don't have really any governance committees outside of committee of the whole, but I did not want to exclude that from the bylaw in case that is an avenue that council would like to pursue at some future date. Finally, this part of the bylaw also addresses subcommittees, which can sometimes be a bit of a difficult thing for committees to navigate. Next slide, please. Thank you, Stacy. So this section of the bylaw deals with conduct and roles. It's part 3 of the bylaw. Conduct of public members is not addressed in council's code of conduct. The code of conduct only pertains to members of council, not members of committees. So the idea is to have a simplified, more user-friendly code of conduct included as part of the council committee's bylaw. The code of conduct is set out in Schedule A of the bylaw, and the rest of this section of the bylaw just explains the roles of the various council committee parties. So this might seem a little bit obvious for members of council who have a lot of experience with council committees, but if you're a newer committee member or a newer councillor member for that matter, or a member of administration, it's nice to have the guide to explain to you what those expectations are so that there's clarity and a good understanding amongst all parties. The next section is the section that deals with committee meetings. This section of the bylaw really is about the nuts and bolts of committee meetings. The requirements in the bylaw align with the requirements in the Municipal Government Act. Many of these requirements are going to be very familiar to all of you because they're similar to the requirements of council committees. And as luck would have it, they also apply to council committees as well, or committees of council, just for clarity. Okay, moving to the next section. This part of the bylaw sets out the committee expectations and requirements. So these are the things we expect back from the committees. Some of these requirements are already in place and already practiced, but the section of the bylaw again supports the committee by providing clarity for committees and administrative departments that support them. Although not on this slide, I'll just mention that the final section of the bylaw addresses the effective date, which is October 1st of 2023. This time frame is recommended so that there's enough time to work through the review process and ensure that administrative supports are ready to assist council committees in complying with the bylaw. So provided that committee of the whole and council is ready to pass the bylaw, we do want to allow a little bit of time so we can continue to work through the review. And wonderful. So this concludes my overview of the bylaw, and I'm happy to turn things over to the chair for any questions or comments from the committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bujaya. It's nice to take different roles every once in a while just to kind of see what it feels like to be sitting in a different spot, right?
It's a lot closer.
I understand that completely. And welcome to both Councillor Van Buurkerk and Councillor Tessier. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? Councillor McCook.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. I really appreciate this coming forward. Just for some clarity, does this encapsulate all the committees that councillors would be a part of? So for example, I'm a part of the Badass Committee. However, there's no administration representative on that. And some of the rules of this bylaw, like meeting location and everything, I'm guessing would not apply to them. And a committee like Badass has their own bylaws that they adhere to. So
thank you, Councillor McCook, through Madam Chair to you. Thank you for that question. It's a good clarification. This only applies to the council committees. So it's the committees that council creates and establishes. So things like our Recreation and Culture Committee, the Arts Council, the Youth Council, things that are within the control of this council, not the external entities to which council may appoint councillors.
okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Can you also just walk me through the number of meetings per year that we have? So we have 8 meetings, I guess. For example, one of the committees I'm on has subcommittees, which would also meet. So would it be the role of the councillor to actively participate in the subcommittees as well, which would be more than 8 meetings?
So the number of meetings is sort of a maximum. This bylaw has been circulated internally to gather feedback from administration to make sure we have that number right. But it doesn't apply to subcommittees. You raise a good question though about councillors' participation on subcommittees. In the bylaw right now, it says that subcommittees would only be formed amongst, I think it's just amongst the members of the committee. I just want to make sure. But it is something we might want to limit to just the voting members, not the councillor members. And I say that not that councillors are not interested in participating on the subcommittees, but knowing that our councillors have their regular council committees, committee of the whole, external commitments, as well as council committee appointments, it's a pretty heavy load. So it might be worth considering only having subcommittees amongst the voting members. So councillors are not voting members, so they wouldn't participate on subcommittees.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. It'd be good to have the clarification on that. Yeah, thanks. And then may I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. I noticed as well that we don't have the provision in here regarding meetings via Zoom or anything like that. What was the reason for that?
Thank you. Also a great observation. It's a logistical issue. Right now, I'm not certain that we have the administrative resources to enable virtual meetings for all the committees. So the easiest thing would be to just have them meet in person. I am awaiting a little bit of feedback from our internal departments to make sure that works. We also have to remember that if they're going to meet virtually, we have to allow that option to participate to observe for the public. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because then we would have to make sure we have the technology available for the committees to meet virtually, hear and see each other if possible, and for members of the public who wish to observe to also hear and see the meeting. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So I took the path of least resistance.
Right.
It is something that we can continue to look at as we bring the bylaw forward. And it is also something we could amend in the future if we're certain that we can make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps it would be good to have maybe some clarity, even if people like our committee members able to attend via Zoom if they're sick at home, or if anything like that. Whereas the whole meeting is not on Zoom, but perhaps
fair.
that one person could attend via Zoom. And then perhaps some clarification on who from the council committee will be required to make the report to council once a year.
Typically, that's the chair, but
The
we
chair.
can clarify that in the chair's role.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all the questions. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCook. You covered some of the ones that I had on my list as well. And Ms. Bajaya, I'm understanding this is here for information and review by this committee, and then you'll be bringing it back to council, and you may or may not be including some of these, but you'll probably report back on what you have done with some of these items. Correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So pending the feedback from Committee of the Whole today, I will likely need to make some adjustments. This is a draft bylaw, and it's really here for discussion purposes.
Yeah, that's the purpose of our Committee of the Whole, so I do appreciate that. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. And thanks, Councillor McCook, for those questions. You covered a lot of what I was going to ask. If you could just clarify once again, voting versus non-voting members and when that comes into play, when it doesn't, and then also touch on the library board and how that differs from internal
Sure.
council.
So in terms of voting versus non-voting members of administration, their role primarily is there to support the committees and do the things like provide subject matter expertise and take care of the logistics. They are non-voting members. They're sort of advisors and they do the administrative work. Councillors are non-voting members on our council advisory committees and task forces. The reason you typically see that set up is that members of council have the opportunity to vote when matters come to council. So any recommendation coming from the committee, all members of council will have the opportunity to discuss, debate, and vote when it's before council. So we want to make sure that the councillors who are participating on the council committees, they're not directing the committee, they're acting as a liaison, as a type of bridge between council and the committee. And we're allowing that group of citizens to do their work, to have those discussions. And the councillor can provide a lot of value by giving them some feedback or direction about matters that have been raised at council or council's past decisions that might be pertinent to the conversation at hand, but they're not there to direct the work of the committee. So it's really making that distinction. Now, when you mentioned the library board, again, that's another example of an external committee. So we don't control the library board. They're established under a different framework. The library board, of course, their mandate and our municipal mandate are a little bit overlapped, and it's very important to us. So we help establish the library board, and we appoint a councillor to the library board. And and I believe on the library board, if I remember correctly, the councillor is a voting member, but I'd have to double check.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I just wanted some clarification on that one. So thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Miller, are there any other questions from members of the committee? Not seeing any then. We do need a motion, I think, at this point, or not, to receive his information. Yes. Shane is nodding for me. Thank you very much. Is there a member of the committee willing to make that motion? No. We have two. Mayor Dadalak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the February 21st, 2023 review of the draft council committees bylaw be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. No further comments. Please vote. And stop the vote. That's how I see it. Yes, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Bajaya. Okay, next up for our presentations will be from the Urban Forest Management Strategy. And actually that's time specific at 5:30. And Ms. Winter, should we proceed, or are you ready to proceed, or you'd like to wait? Everyone is present, you can proceed? Then that's okay. All right, then please come. Just realized as I looked at, oh, this is 5:30 and we're way ahead of ourselves here. 10 minutes ahead, 11 minutes ahead. Thank you. Please introduce yourselves and then proceed.
Hi, I'm Lenore Turner. I'm the environmental lead
working.
for the city of Beaumont. And I'll let Jordan.
I'm Jordan Glides. I'm with WSP. We were the consulting group that worked on their workforce management strategy.
Thank you. You do have to move the mic close because otherwise you just don't get it. Thank you.
All right, so hello to the mayor and the committee of the whole and everyone present tonight. Thank you for being here to take the time to be involved in this presentation on the City of Beaumont Urban Forest Management Strategy. So this is a presentation of the final strategy to the committee of the whole. So for the agenda today, I'll do a quick introduction of the city project team, WST project team, discuss strategic alignment and background, do a strategy overview, discuss inventory and analysis review, engagement and review process, strategy and implementation, and then next steps and summary and a question and answer period. So as mentioned, I'm Lenore Turner with the city as the environmental lead. I was the city contact and the project manager on this project. We also have Drew Ramsey, who is the team lead for parks with the city, and he provided expertise and information, and Darren DeLazy, who's present tonight to answer questions at the end as well. And he is a operations resource inspector, and he helped with expertise and information.
And as I mentioned earlier, I'm Jordan Glides. I am the landscape architecture manager with WSP. I was the technical advisor on this document. Kevin Fulmer is joining us virtually. He was the project planner and the coordinator for the project. And then Nola Kilmartin, you may be familiar. She was a part of the presentation we presented last February. And Megan Taylor is also an urban planner. They send their regards. They weren't able to join us, but they were involved more on the engagement side of the aspect. And Kevin and I were involved on the balance of the document. So.
In terms of strategic alignment, development of this strategy aligned with an objective in the council strategic plan that came out in 2022. And that objective was city operations and the community's growth are guided by environmental, social, and governance principles. Development of this strategy of an urban forest tree program was listed as an action item under environmental stewardship within the municipal development plan that came out in 2019. And as well, the creation of an urban forest strategy was listed as a key implementation action item in the environmental master plan, which came out in 2021. And development of an urban forest strategy helps to promote the goals listed in the EMP, which include goals related to ecology, clean air, and community development. So for strategic background, Beaumont's urban forest is a valuable asset that provides environmental, social, cultural, and economic benefits. Currently, there's 9,900 trees that are part of the public tree inventory. And so the city is responsible for these trees in terms of managing and maintaining them. This number is continually growing. The urban forest management strategy will provide a framework for effective management of these trees, ensure that there's a healthy tree canopy as the community grows. The city previously had no formal strategy for the management of trees, and this resulted in a reactionary approach rather than an effective, proactive approach. The urban forest management strategy was developed collaboratively with input from the public and stakeholders. This was through workshops, focus group meetings, an online public survey, a public engagement event that involved tree planting, and internal staff consultations with representatives from key departments. Key departments included planning and development, engineering, environment, and parks. The strategy was developed and involved common challenges, identifying common challenges, opportunities, priorities related to the current management of the city's urban forest. It involved creating measurable and achievable targets to grow and enhance the forest. And it is an action plan that provides the city with valuable information and recommendations to manage and grow the tree canopy. The urban forest is a shared responsibility from city staff, individual residents, local councillors, private businesses, and other stakeholders. I'll pass it to Jordan.
Thanks, Lenore. So as mentioned earlier, the urban forest management strategy was previously presented last February. Just when we were at the early stages, we had completed about 3/4 of the engagement, the internal engagement, and then we were slowly moving towards the strategy development. So we essentially began the project with an extensive engagement process as well as a technical review stage. The technical review was done in collaboration with the City of Beaumont GIS team. As Lenore had mentioned, the engagement process included stakeholder sessions, public engagement events, including the online survey and tree planting event. And then what we had done is we utilized the technical data and the engagement information that we had obtained to take a holistic approach to the development of the strategy, goals, objectives, and targets. So as part of this, the strategy's vision, guiding principles, and objectives were developed in the months following our first committee of the whole presentation. These were then reviewed, discussed, and modified during the final stakeholder meeting on March 31st with input from planners and other city staff members. The vision statement on the screen in front of you has guided the overall development of the document from the beginning and helped refine the strategy into 5 guiding principles and 4 objectives. These principles shown were developed through the refinement of the recurring themes fleshed out during the engagement and stakeholder process. These ultimately highlighted the most important aspects of the urban forest, its value as an infrastructure asset, its need to benefit all equitably, its role in climate resiliency, the importance of a shared responsibility approach, and its ability to adapt over time. From there, the 4 objectives were further broken down in the strategy into specific sections that will directly impact the growth of the urban forest. So grow is identifying the creation or creating a diverse and resilient urban forest through tree canopy growth and species diversity. Protect ensures the success and vitality of the urban forest through thoughtful maintenance practices, succession planning, and data collection. Maintain and manage ensures thoughtful resource allocation for the best successes for the tree longevity. And lastly, educate and engage informs the public on the benefits and importance of the urban forest and expand the community engagement. So just a really brief overview, some of the key elements that are in this document is that it's intended to provide a 20-year roadmap to guide the growth of the urban forest through established principles, objectives, targets, and associated actions. The intent is to revisit and potentially reevaluate these items every 3 to 5 years, as monitoring the effectiveness and adjusting priorities should be addressed on a cyclical basis. Just to touch a little bit on the inventory analysis portion of it. As we had kind of gone into a bit more in depth with you at the last committee of the whole meeting, I won't go into too much detail, but just to give you a brief summary of how the data was collected and analyzed. So LiDAR and GIS data were used to calculate the existing tree canopy coverage. This data was then divided into existing development lands and future development lands to get a more accurate tree canopy percentage. In response to this data, targets and strategies were then created. For example, using existing species and information data provided to us by Darren and Drew's teams, we determined current species percentages of all 9,900 city-owned trees. This does not include trees on private property, but gives a good understanding of the canopy makeup. As evident when you drive down some of the more mature neighborhoods in Beaumont, and on the pie chart here, elms and ash and spruce varieties make up more than 50% of the species diversities. So in response, as an example, Grow Target 2 within the document identifies the need to increase tree diversity through reviewing of the general design standards and ensuring park planting includes a diversity of species, just to name a couple of the approaches with that example. The GIS spatial data also allowed us to determine the amount of city-owned open space not currently covered by tree canopy. So all of this data helped to realize the achievable growths for the urban forest and directly influence the strategy's targets. So just to touch on the engagement and review process. So prior to the first committee of the whole meeting on February 15th of last year, 2 stakeholder sessions were conducted. And at that time, we summarized the findings and need for an urban forest management strategy. Since our February 15th presentation to you last year, we finalized the engagement stage with the completion of a 3rd staff and stakeholder workshop, launched and completed a public online survey, carried out a tree planting event, and completed an internal review process. I just wanted to quickly highlight here, the WSP really appreciated the amount of extensive input provided by the various stakeholder groups at the City of Beaumont. This input really helped refine the vision and the strategy, and I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Lenore and her team for their efforts in the creation of this document that we are collectively very proud of. With regards to the online survey, so we had launched that on Earth Day, April 21st, 2022, to inform residents of the project and gather feedback. It stayed open for 60 days and it closed on June 20th, 2022. Fairly successful outcome with 209 respondents. The survey was intended to be brief to achieve a higher participation and completion rates. It was about plus or minus 10 minutes to complete the entire survey. And the survey tasked respondents with ranking priorities and activities that directly impact the urban forest. And so all the results from the online survey are in the document itself, as well as in the appendix at the very back. Any comments that were provided are collected and gathered there as well. Just with regards to some of the survey findings, the outcome of the survey provided an in-depth assessment on how residents view the urban forest and what they expect from it and what is important to them. For example, opportunities to connect with nature and environment stewardship ranked high in what residents want to see from the urban forest, and an Adopt a Tree program had the highest percentage of support amongst community programming events suggested. These survey results were analyzed and incorporated into the completion of the survey targets. Just touching on the public tree planting events, we've got a couple celebrities in our midst here today. This was held on June 4th to promote the strategy and garner interest from residents in the urban forest. The event was a practice of approaches found in the strategy. It was focused efforts to increase biodiversity. It served as an educational, promotional, and also some practical insight for the public to better understand the growth of the urban forest. The event was a great success with more than 50 participants who attended and over 150 trees were planted. And now here we are at the project timeline. So now the urban forest management strategy is complete. The next important step is the implementation of the elements within the strategy, as well as monitoring the effectiveness of these elements. Along with this, there is also the possibility for the creation of an asset management plan, which will provide insight on the urban forest canopy asset value and how to manage this asset. I'll now pass it back to Lenore.
Thank you. So in terms of strategy and implementation, so as Jordan mentioned, there are 12 targets and they each have recommended actions. Through discussion with the various departments, these were determined to be achievable and beneficial actions. And achieving the targets will also be dependent on several other factors, however, including approved annual parks budget, weather conditions, number of trees planted on private property, and future development plans. Targets are categorized into 4 objectives, as mentioned below. This is a table of all the 12 targets categorized into the 4 objectives. They're categorized in those objectives due to similarities in the actions. The targets and actions include recommendations for increasing tree canopy cover, increasing tree diversity, developing tree protection measures, community outreach efforts, updates to city processes, standards, and regulations, and more. Each target includes information for implementation, which will help to achieve the targets. And they include actions, what specific actions are required, rationale, what is important in this target, and how will the actions help reach it. Measure success, how will we assess the progress and measure it in terms of meeting the target, and a time frame, how long do we expect to reach the target, and resources for implementation, which departments and other stakeholders will be involved in reaching this target. So for example, grow target 1 is to increase the tree canopy cover to 10% in the historic Beaumont land. So this is the currently developed land in Beaumont. And this is expected, it could be accomplished in approximately 20 years. To accomplish this, the public tree inventory would be increased to approximately 13,200 trees from the current 9,975. So some of the specific actions that we'd like to take to reach this target would include identifying planting locations. So this would include reviewing any green space. Of course, sporting fields could not be planted on locations with underground infrastructure and whatnot. So we'd have to identify viable planting locations, develop a tree planting schedule. This would need to be done in terms of determining where we'll be doing work and trying to be effective in terms of doing work in similar areas. Increasing number of trees planted annually in parks areas by the city to approximately 45 from 0. So currently, in the last couple of years, trees haven't been planted in parked areas because those planting budgets have gone to replacing trees on boulevards and other high priority items such as that. We are almost up to date now in replacing trees on boulevards. So we could move to planting in parks, depending on budget, and then keep public tree inventory up to date. So measures of success involve LiDAR to record tree canopy, which will be done every few years, and then updating the public tree inventory. Timeframe would be 20 years overall to reach this target and approximately 1 to 3 years to complete action items 1 and 2. So resources for implementation, parks team would be the lead in this target, and supporting resources would be other departments such as engineering, environment, planning and development, and various other stakeholders as required. So next steps for this recommended strategy are, it's recommended that council receive this strategy. And then following that, estimated cost to implement any of these actions and targets would be estimated and then included in future proposed budgets, such as increasing the tree planting budget. Following that, implementation, and then monitoring and reevaluation. So we expect to review this strategy every 3 to 5 years to determine if we're meeting the targets, and to see if it's still relevant or if it needs to be updated as needed, and on an ongoing basis. So in summary, Beaumont's urban forest is a valuable asset that provides many benefits. This strategy is a 20-year roadmap that includes measurable and achievable targets and actions. Reevaluation of the strategy will be completed every 3 to 5 years and adjustments made as required. This strategy was developed collaboratively and will provide a framework for the effective management, maintenance, and improvement of the urban forest. Achieving targets will be dependent on effective implementation of this strategy, as well as other factors previously mentioned, such as approved parks budget, weather conditions, future development plans, and private property planting. Next steps include budgeting, implementation, monitoring, and reevaluation. And developing the urban forest is a shared responsibility between city staff, individual residents, local councillors, and other stakeholders to achieve a successful urban forest over time. So thank you very much for your time tonight, and we can take discussion or questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Lenore and Jordan. That was a very comprehensive report. I learned a lot just by reading that. That's a lot of good information in there, just in terms of the number of trees, the data you've got. I think it really positions us well into the future. So members of committee, just to remind you that this is here for us for clarification, information, et cetera. The environmental master plan is where this comes from and is aligned with, but certainly this is our opportunity to ask questions and get clarification as needed. So Councillor Tessier, would you like to kick it off?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the great presentation. It's very in depth and well done, and look forward to the next 20 years here. I think Beaumont is way behind on trees, besides maybe like on the south side on 43rd Ave would be the only trees planted probably in the 70s and 80s type of thing. But I have a couple specific questions. So I guess on the cash and lieu thing, is that where we're catching up on Beaumont Lakes in the boulevard area of planting kind of the last couple of years? And so I'm trying to figure out this cash and lieu thing. So if we get cash and lieu on one side and then we're catching up on boulevards, I'm just trying to understand the gap there in why that development didn't get the boulevards done. So where does the cash actually go if we're behind on parks and boulevards?
So yeah, so if a developer does not plant the required number of trees, as per the general design standards, they pay cash in lieu to cover that. And then in terms of that specific area, Darren, do you have anything? Yeah. Sure.
Oh,
We have lots of chairs. Let's get them a chair.
You gotta hold a squat when you come up here, so yeah.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Darren Delazay. I'm with the Infrastructure Department. So regarding that subdivision you're referring to in Beaumont Lakes, that area, as my understanding, was let go. So the developer didn't fulfill their obligations and the city ended up taking it over. So that was part of the reason why nothing was planted there. But in terms of the cash in lieu front, so when they can't plant enough trees based on our GDS requirements, that money is allocated to other areas, hopefully within the same subdivision area, primarily to encompass that subdivision area that's under the guided area. Or do we use those in open spaces within those subdivision areas? But in terms of Beaumont Lakes, that was a little bit of a different circumstance there because the development wasn't completed fully.
Yeah, that makes sense. It looked a little run down for a couple of years and wondering what was happening with the development, but this might be getting a bit specific and I can get answers later, but I thought the developer was still selling lots. So when we as a city take some of that money off them actually selling lots from that specific developer?
Councillor, because I think it might be going into there. That's a different department.
Yeah, it's
But
I'll
Councillor-
do a councillor inquiry if we can
Do you want to
capture some of that, but
say yours?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that is definitely getting into a legislative and a whole different area that I'd have to do some research into.
Thank you for that.
thank you.
Do you have other questions, Councillor Tessier?
Yes, so I just want to understand like tree stands and when we get into a development and I've heard that we bulldoze them because we can't save them, but other developments in the surrounding area keep the trees and you think the value would be increased. So I guess I'm looking for a really understanding why we're planting trees in lieu of just bulldozing 20, 30-year-old tree stands.
Okay, so I think you're referring to like a natural aspen stand, like we're seeing in Forest Heights and areas of Four Seasons. In those respective areas, so when there's grade changes with aspen stands, because they're all one giant root system, what happens with those grade changes impacts further into the stand where dirt's not actually moved up to the stand, but close to it. It could impact the entire stand as we see fit. We just can't see it underground. So it takes about 4 to 5 years to show those impacts. And also the same implications happen from water sitting on root systems. So if there's an area where drainage has been changed and there's now sitting water on top of those root systems in an aspen stand, that will suffocate the root system the same as a grade change perhaps. So in those cases, I think if they're not salvageable, they have to take those tree stands out based on what's going to be left and what the implications of those grade changes might be. And the overall, sitting water and regime on those root systems would be. So they have to make that call eventually. Coupled with the fact that when you change the dynamics of those areas with those natural aspen stands, you actually make them a little bit more prone to some known diseases like hypoxylon canker, poplar borer. They start to move in, and then the stand's health degenerates to a point where they're not worth keeping either. So sometimes it's better to clean the slate and start with planted stock as opposed to trying to revive those natural aspen stands.
Yeah, thank you for that
No problem.
educated response. Appreciate that.
I think he knows his trees.
Mhm.
I'll just add a quick note that we do have in the strategy where it is possible to save a stand. So as Darren mentioned, there's often hydrological conditions in terms of changing the grade that will result in not being able to change those in the future. However, in the strategy, there is discussion of where it is possible to save those stands. We hope that we can incorporate them into future developments. So taking a bit of the balanced approach where we don't want to save them if they will lead to dying afterwards, but we do have a specific recommendation in there that developers do a hydrological assessment, whereas if they do keep the stand, they prove that the future hydrology will work for that new stand. So we do want to keep them where possible, definitely. And that's discussed in there in terms of hydrological assessments from the developers, and prioritizing biophysical reports are required in new area structure plans. And sometimes the biophysical reports do recommend keeping tree stands, and we do want to keep them where possible. So yeah, it's a bit of a balance in terms of keeping them when possible, but ensuring they'll be
Thank you.
viable.
And that's the strategy. Did you
For
have a
sure.
further question?
Yes, ma'am. I have a few more, but I can wait for others.
There's
But
others waiting, so I just wanted to know if you have a few more.
yes, I do. Thank you for that answer. That's appreciative. And I think with this strategy in place, that'll be captured a bit better. Specifically, I guess on trees, Four Seasons, it looks like some of the trees are just kind of like not doing well, but they've been there for 20 years. I haven't been able to answer the residents' questions as to why. Is there a reason, and is there a fix, or is that just the landscape of that environment?
Some of the spruces definitely in that area are struggling. We're seeing that impact everywhere. The climatic conditions that we've been dealing with in the last 10 years have changed native species living habitat as well, and what they're able to cope with. You may have seen like excess of coning and stuff like that happen in spruce trees over the last 2 years. That's another ramification of stress. That particular area is one of those areas that we want to encompass in our urban forestry strategy, is getting more trees in an area like that. When Four Seasons was originally established, it was planted with pretty small stock. And it's taken a long time in a very exposed environment. As you know, Four Seasons is very exposed, to get to that size that they're at now, which is not very large for how long that park's been there for. So, but there is open areas there that can facilitate more trees for sure and enhance that park, especially in the shade tree front. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm good. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the inventory of trees on the one slide there. I noticed that there isn't a lot of fruit-bearing trees, and I wanted to know if there's been discussion around fruit-bearing trees, and kind of where I'm going with this is in light of the things like the food bank and those kinds of organizations that help our community. If there's been talks of bringing more fruit-bearing trees and perhaps community events for during the harvest season to fill up those sorts of organizations for our community. So it's kind of my thought behind it.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Great question, Councillor Miller. The fruit trees are kind of a double-edged sword. So we don't want them on boulevards, because we have a couple of apple stands on boulevards in some of the areas of Monteley, and it's caused a real problem when the fruit isn't picked and it becomes a mess. So there's ramifications to those, but in terms of open areas and park planting, I think it's a fabulous idea. Something that we're looking at and we should be looking at. The one issue is just what can we plant, what's going to sustain itself, and what can people utilize, I guess, at the end of the day. Coupled with the fact there's actually programs as well where residents have private fruit trees, and once they're done with them, I know in Leduc they have food bank members that come out as volunteers and pick the remaining apples off trees and fruit bearing trees to bring back to the food bank. So there is programs like that happening in other communities. But in terms of our own land, yeah, we could definitely plant more fruit trees for sure.
Okay, awesome. It sounds like you guys have.
I just wanted to add that we are currently developing the urban agriculture plan as well, and that will address the fruit bearing tree topic as well.
Okay, awesome. And then just one last question on the open spaces versus backyards. Is there anything that maybe we should know or that I'm not aware of for incentive for residents to put fruit bearing trees in their yards, or even just regular trees to increase, I guess, the forestry in our city?
I don't think there is any current programs that I know of. You can correct me if you're wrong. However, one of the specific actions in here that we'd like to implement is to create incentives for private property owners. So one would be just education on the website in terms of what species work well. And then one would also be partnering with nurseries in the area, potentially to provide, discounts on trees or something if they are beneficial to our area.
Yeah, and on the fruit bearing tree front, I think we primarily think of apples in this area. People that have them in their properties, if they're not well maintained, they often can promote disease, and you get some diseases in areas that just infiltrate into neighboring properties. So it's one of those double-edged swords again, where what happens in one property can affect neighboring properties where people are trying to do their due diligence and have those sort of mechanisms of use.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good point. You're definitely the professionals when it comes to that. So, but I'm glad it's on your radar. So that is it for me. Thank you.
Good question. Councillor McCook, you're up next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for this strategy. I think it's really important for our community. People love our parks and our green space, and I think we can only really improve on this. The part about quantifying benefits will be especially helpful when we speak to residents in the community, as well as it pertains to, especially as it pertains to reducing the strain on our city's infrastructure. I don't think people really understand that important aspect to it. So that was really helpful information as well. Love the tree planting. I wish I could have attended the event. I hope events like this will continue, and hopefully we can do more. I think it's really great community building as well as connecting. I'm still keen to see how we're going to address the issues of the zero lot lines, in addition to increasing our canopy, as they clearly reduce our ability to do so, as developers also stated that as a concern. So interested to hear how we're going to kind of balance that with developers wanting zero lot lines and the need for them, as well as how we're going to grow our tree canopy in those areas. So one of the questions I had was, the urban forest is a shared responsibility which supports the collaborative success of the community. I think that's a great perspective. I do believe that this needs to be everyone's responsibility. Can you just give a couple ideas as to how we would go about that?
Jordan, I don't know if you want to come up as well, but I'll just add that shared responsibility in terms of private landowners can plant trees and take care of their trees. Also, it was mentioned in the survey that residents are in favor of an adopt a tree program. So if we are able to implement that, of course, that's dependent on future budget and resources. However, it would be nice to have an adopt a tree program where residents could provide funds to plant a tree, parks could plant it, however, they could help maintain that tree. So that's one way to be collaborative. Also possible volunteering opportunities in the future. We would like to get something like that going where residents could be involved as volunteers, potentially as, for example, helping count trees for the inventory or maintaining trees. Yeah, those are some ideas for now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. One more question. So we talked about how Beaumont's sitting at about 5.2% of our tree canopy, and a lot of other municipalities are at 10. So we obviously have a lot of opportunity to increase ours. And I believe the report showed that we will be kind of changing our requirements and our MDP and stuff like that when working with developers. We know how quickly we will move on this, as we have, 3 or 4 developments on the go right now. Will we be able to implement any change that quickly?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that would involve land use bylaw and or GDS changes. Perhaps. Might be yeah, I think, we hope to do it soon. That's more of a planning and development area, I believe. They would be involved in that. So I'd have to check with them, but it is something they want to do as well. So hopefully within 2 to 3 years. Does that sound reasonable? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCook. Thank you. Is that it? Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. Happy to hear everyone's questions and can always count on engagement when we're talking about trees in here, that's for sure. One thing I've noticed is a shift in thinking since my time on council. The first budget that I witnessed saw trees as a liability, and it was a financial liability line item because there was such a huge deficit in the boulevard trees. There was numbers greater than $200,000 line item to boulevard tree replacement because the inventory and the developers weren't checked. There wasn't a I guess you can't expect unless you inspect. That's what it comes down to, right? So my first question, it kind of ponies off of a couple others, but when we get down to it as part of this plan, or does it fit as part of this plan, or does it fit in another piece of the bylaw framework? Where will the look at have the developers done what they're supposed to do? Where does that come from? Will that come as part of this plan, or is it this plan working with other pieces of the land use bylaw? How does that work, or how might that work?
Yeah, there are a few items in this strategy that address that to some degree. So one is ensure that the design drawings, the finalized version fits with their original design. So that was a version of that was in this strategy. So because they submit design drawings, we do want to ensure their final product meets that, as well as their design drawings meet the requirements of the GDS, the General Design Standards. So those two items are in here. It does require resources to do that. So that's part of the implementation process. But yeah, that is there, as well as protecting trees when new developments go in, protecting current trees, and that would be part of the building permit process. So right now they have a permit and for lot grading. So if they damage any city infrastructure, for example, sidewalks, gutters, they must pay a fee. And so trees aren't fully included in that process at this point, but in the future, we do want to have that included in the process for the permits.
Yeah, and it should be noted too that there are different ways to put a housing package together. Some developers and builders, they've marketed and built out a full yard. Others give you a house on a dirt lot, right? So those developers who are taking that extra step to make sure that the tree needs are met in the front yard, and that the slope is achieved and the grass is there and the backyard is done and those kinds of things, I think should be promoted somehow. I just don't know the best way to tell them how to do that, probably through the land use bylaw. So I'll stop there. Next thought would be around the ability of this forest management strategy to leave room to partner with external committees or other nonprofits to achieve some of our goals. There are beginning to be some significant efforts and nonprofit groups really making huge strides in our region around the whole reforesting, rewilding area. And just wondering, will there be room in our plan to partner with entities that are doing this good work?
Definitely, like there is a mention at the end that we do want to look for grant opportunities where possible. So there are many organizations providing grants. Of course, it takes time to look through grants and decide which are the best to apply for. But ideally, grants would be applied for where they make sense and partner with those organizations providing them. Yeah, and there is mention of volunteer opportunities. In terms of partnering with other organizations, where there would be a benefit, it would be great to do so. But currently, I think the grant section is the main part that's included. Yeah, if there are ideas on specific organizations to partner with, it'd be great for us to hear more on that as well.
Yeah, you betcha. And then the last piece will just be around public education. And I know that's going to be a huge component. It's one of the stated objectives is to educate and engage. And the resources are going to be required to do that. It's going to take quite a dynamic approach. It's going to take in the forest area approach. It's going to take in the school approach. a flyer approach, a website approach, and all of that. And the piece of education that we can easily jump on, is something like Black Knot, right? It doesn't take a whole bunch of driving around the city before you start to see that. And it would be great to see some kind of an educational tool or flyer or did you know door hanger or something that as we notice these things that we can start pointing it out throughout the community. I don't know that we need to add, thousands and thousands of dollars to a budget to get some door hangers that arm our staff with just to start an education campaign because we got to start somewhere, right? So yeah, that's my comments for now. And I really appreciate this in front of us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Van Newkirk. Councillor Tessier, starting round 2.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on species and I guess to clear some rumors out there is the Swedish aspen trees, are they going to be kind of extinct in the next 10 years and developers are still planting them? So is that something we're looking at maybe discontinuing and what truth is out there from an expert?
They're not being planted by the city anymore. They haven't been for quite some time now. Developers were allowed to plant them once upon a time. That was pre-poplar borer era, where now we have an influx of it, combined with the Swedish columnar aspens get similar diseases to any aspen species in the area, which it's a perfect vector for them to bridge from one stand to the next. So they're no longer being planted in a lot of localities. It was overplanted, in my opinion, on several regards because they're fast growing, they're condensed, and they're one of the few columnar species one could plant on a tight lot. So they're definitely overplanted. That genetic modification is being infused into other species now with the columnar varieties. So I think they're going to be moving a little bit more away from those nurseries, coupled with the fact that they're seriously disease prone because of the amount that were planted. So you won't see very many of them coming forward, and we don't allow them in any of our new plantings.
Okay.
For our areas. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions from members of council, members of the committee. Just one that I have that I just wanted to follow up on. In the report, you talk about the budget has been included, the strategy is included in the budget with more trees being planted. Is it fair to say that the same budget is there as was in the past, or has there been an increase in the budget that's been presented?
Are you referring to the 2023
Right,
operating budget?
the one that has yet to be.
The one is yet. So there was an increased planting budget in that one because this strategy wasn't totally completed at the time of that budget. A lot of the items aren't implemented in that budget yet.
So
However, the planting budget was increased to accommodate some of
the
this.
continuation of what we had, but we'll have to wait till 2024 to see the addition of some of the implementation strategies that you have.
For the majority of them, except the planting budget will be
Okay.
able to accommodate some increased planting.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you.
Then I think at this point, is there a member of the committee who is willing to pass a motion to accept this report as information? Councillor Tessier.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move that the February 21st, 2023 Urban Forest Management Strategy be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of committee, please vote. And that is passed unanimously. So thank you very much. Thanks for all the work you're doing on this. Okay. Our next presentation is on Recreation Parks and Cultural Advisory Committee. Is our member Swinter. Ms. Swinter,
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our speaker is actually not here yet for that next one.
is that one time specific and I missed that as well? Yes.
It's
6:15,
time
yes.
specific for 6:15.
So we can go ahead to the next one if that's okay.
Unfortunately, our
can't.
speaker for that one is not here either, Madam Chair. We could start the Economic Development Departmental update if
Are we able to do that one?
we can go ahead.
You
and
can go ahead with
start
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving then for people that maybe didn't follow that to presentation 4E, Economic Development Department Overview. Welcome, please come on up.
Thank you.
Please talk directly into the mic because start by introducing yourself
Hi, thank you. My name is Jennifer Niesink. I'm the Director of Economic Development with the City of Beaumont, and I am very excited to be here today. What I want to do today is give a little brief overview of what the department was, what we do, and then I really want to focus on what the key things we're chasing this year. I want to go down what we're really going to try to get set up this year and how we're going to start to build that economic development base for Beaumont. So if we could just go to the first slide, please. Oh, I have it here.
You need to drive the car. There you go.
Oh, all right, I can do this. Oh, see, I say I can do it, but I can't. Excellent. Okay, so I'll start off with a quick overview of what we have for a department. So I'm in place for the director. We also have our two managers here with us this evening. We have our manager of business and partnership relations. That's Mr. Louis Franco. He's sitting back here. And we also have our manager of investment, attraction and growth, Ms. Wendy Jones. We have a position that's an economic development specialist. It's just been posted, so we're hoping to fill that shortly. And then we have an economic development coordinator who handles things like business licenses and the day-to-day. I've got two quick slides of some of the things we do in ECDEV. We are, of course, a catch-all department. So these are the big 8 main functions. And then there's a lot of little things that pop up, which makes our job very exciting and a little hectic, which is great. So we do business license administration, as council knows. Business retention, expansion, and promotion is something we're really trying to focus on this year. And I'll touch on that later in the presentation. But when everybody thinks economic development, they think, how are you going to grow the city? Part of that is, how do you grow your local businesses? How do you get the people who are here to grow, to expand, to stay, to thrive? So that's something we're really focusing on this year. Investment attraction is the other leg of that. So how do we bring the new business into Beaumont? How do we get what the people in Beaumont need? How do we get what's going to move that tax base? Strategic partnership and development management. One thing I have learned since moving to Alberta is there is a lot of strategic partnership. There's a lot of regional committees. There's a lot of resources out there. So we're doing our best to tap into all of those. And that goes along with the supporting the regional and beyond economic initiatives. So sometimes if you're supporting something that's going to happen at the airport, it may not be specifically in Beaumont, but there's a huge economic benefit that could happen in Beaumont. So we do spend some time working on larger initiatives like this. We take care of advertising, sponsorship, and naming rights. So things like rink boards and a few things like that as they pop up, as well as land and lease management. So that's where you see the ice cream truck when they're parked every year. We handle that with them. And finally, we deal with the seed co-working space. So the seed co-working space has a few businesses in there right now, and it's modeled as an incubator. And this is something that we're reviewing at budget next month. So something we'll be looking a little bit further into. Before I move that, are there any questions on any of these specifically? Is that okay?
Finish your presentation and then we'll open it up to questions.
This was the part I really want to talk about. So these are our priorities for 2023. The first I touched on a little bit, and that's improving that relationship with the local businesses. So going into that, really what we're doing is we are endeavoring to meet with every single business in Beaumont this calendar year. Louis is going to be spending a lot of time from the office, a lot of time out meeting them, but it's really how we get a handle on how these businesses are doing. What are their challenges? What are the opportunities? What's stopping them from growing? And for the ones who are considering leaving, what can get them to stay? So this is a little bit time intensive, but incredibly helpful. And it's something we plan on reporting back to council with. So we're aiming at meeting with them sector by sector. So we can come back and say, you know, all of our professional offices are seeing this, or our restaurants are seeing that. It just makes it a little bit easier to let council know what we're hearing out there. Next, we want to work on refining Beaumont's identity. So how are we presenting ourselves out there? How are we chasing down these opportunities? We'll be working closely with the comms department on a lot of this, but what we're looking to do is refine that identity, and let's get our future in place. Let's be the place people think of. I want to do something new. I want to do something innovative. Let's think Beaumont. Beaumont has a great base with that, with the Ella vehicle that still gets talked about at a lot of the meetings I go to. So how do we build off of that? And what else should we be delving into? Working at the regional meetings, what we also learn is what everyone else is doing. So we don't want to do that either. So we're going to use that information and just pick out our strength. How are we going to market? And then that be the developing the marketing materials. So we're hoping Q2, Q3 to have good marketing material available, as well as individual site selector type pieces. So hydrogen is huge right now. What are we going to put out there for hydrogen companies as compared to someone who's doing a retail store? So we'll have it sectored out, which will really help attract people to the Beaumont area. This goes in with that industry target plan. So when I first came here, what you do is you drive around and what's missing, that's quick and easy to do. The mayor joked at a couple of things, but he can't buy underwear in Beaumont. Yes, we realize that. But we also need to know, what does our landscape work for? What do we have that our neighbors don't have? And what key industries should we be targeting? Is it hydrogen? Is it something else? And that's what we really want to delve into. And that's what our new position is going to help with. So we have all that research to do. We can bring that information and we can be smart with our time. There's a lot of things you can just chase down, but if you chase down every opportunity, you're spending a lot of time doing things that don't necessarily work for Beaumont. And we want to be really cognizant of that and really have a key targeted plan of what we're going after. A great example of this is healthcare. So council's well aware we really lack healthcare here. So how do we target that? How do we go after it? How do we best chase that down? So these are things that we're looking for here. Investment readiness. So we want to be very clear with developers around what it takes to invest in Beaumont. We're creating a one-page document working with planning, but if you invest here, here's the stages of what you need. Here's what gets submitted. Here's the timelines to get that back. It sounds simple. It sounds like something you would just have, but it's key and developers love that. It shows that we're ready to come to the table. It shows that we're excited for the development. And it's something that I think we could be very successful with. The targeted incentives I touched on earlier, but we will have a full target incentive policy or procedure. I think procedure is probably the proper word there. And we're looking to have that by the end of the year to aim our work for next year. And then the project specific packages. So we actually submitted the very first one today. Mrs. Jones completed it. There was an opportunity that came up. They always look for a bunch of information. So we do that for every project. We create a specific package of what Beaumont can offer, what's available and what could be worked here. And we submit those. So those are something that just happen as the opportunities come up, but we'll always chase down the ones that could work for us. Indigenous business growth and partnerships, something I'm personally passionate about. I understand that in June, this council made a commitment to working on that. So we are in the very early stages right now, but I am looking to work very closely with our First Nation partners and developing a growth of whether that be municipal owned businesses, First Nations owned businesses or how that works out, but really looking to encourage that growth and just see how we can partner with them there. So council updates, as I said, I do want to report back to council. So it'll be quarterly in 2024, May and October of this year. So we'll bring back some of those findings from the businesses, some of the key target things we're finding, some recommendations we may or may not have for incentives. And these will all come back to council throughout the year. In addition to this, we will have the specific projects and the things as they come along and as it's necessary to bring to council. This I kind of put up here for my own sake more than anything, but there are a lot of regional associations. So we are working on delving in where we are most useful, what we can get the most out of. We're meeting with the CAO's office this week to find out who's attending what. A number of these even have subcommittees. So it's exciting, it's a lot. It's almost a full-time job. And that's where we really have to track down how many of these we can be effective in. I thought a couple of quick opportunities to talk to council about, because these are all things you know and have heard about. So hydrogen is huge right now in economic development and everything. So we are actually meeting with a couple of private companies who are looking at options there. We had the option to attend a summit on February 7th, along with a couple of members of council. There is a conference in the end of April. And this is a 2-day larger conference where we're actually expecting some announcements and there's some targeted workshops. So it'll help us get our head around what hydrogen is. There's a rainbow of colors. You almost have to be a subject matter expert to understand what you're chasing down. So it gives us an opportunity to learn about that. And we're also a member of Edmonton Global Subcommittee on Hydrogen, which is exciting because it'll get us on the ground floor of everything that's coming in. The 5,000 vehicle challenge is related to hydrogen, but it's something where they're actually looking to have 5,000 fueled vehicles on the road by the end of 2028. There's a pilot project starting this year between Edmonton and Calgary. So it's something we'll be watching closely, because how can we play a part in that? Is it our fleets? Do we have a fueling station? Something we'd like to track down. And then the 10 gig. The 10 gig is something that we really want to work to leverage. It sets Beaumont apart. It's again, what allows us to be those innovative leaders. So we want to see how we can leverage that 10 gig to bring in businesses that could take full advantage of that opportunity. And then this is my favorite one. So mayor and council's role. Of all the directors here, I probably have the one where mayor and council will get approached the most with things that could really be useful to us. A lot of times this happens. So if someone will come up and say, hey, I'd love to build this in Beaumont. Please don't ever assume they've told us. Please go through the CAO's office or through LLS and get that information to us, because 90% of the great leads we get are people who've just talked to someone somewhere. So we're always saying that's worth on getting back to administration where it's possible. There'll always be the federal and provincial funding announcements, opportunities. So prospect meetings is needed. So when certain companies get to a point, it helps tremendously to have mayor or council present. It shows them the city's on board. It shows them that they're not going to hit a hurdle at that point. So as we get to that point with potential developments, we always ask for some assistance from council there. Business visits. So as I mentioned, we're aiming to meet with every business this year. From each sector, what we're looking to do is create a champions group or a group of leaders who want to come back with ideas. I think that would be a great thing for some of mayor and council to attend if possible. It's great to hear directly from those businesses. It's not feasible to come to every business visit, but when we get those committees together, I think that would be fantastic. Engagements, so key messaging to the public and to the businesses. So when we do have projects come up, we'll make sure to go through the proper channels and get you those key messages, what we'd like to say, what we'd like out there, and of course, what we can't say. So that will be always a big role for council. And then just the investment readiness. So this council comes across already as being excited for those innovative projects, which helps a lot when we talk to people, but just encouraging that business-friendly environment, taking a look at incentives, should they be something we require. And again, we won't know that until we go through our industry target plan, but this is kind of the big way we can use council's help. So something we're always looking at there. And then questions.
There you are. Thank you very much. And you have a lot on your plate. There's a lot going on there. Members of committee, do you have any questions? Councilor Mulgoswain.
Yeah, I've got a million, but I know we don't have time. So first, it's really great to see the strategy here. The thing I picked up most on this is the inclusion of mayor and council in this strategy. I'll share previously. Personally, I felt a little bit, left out, for lack of a better term, where administration would go away and get all these great things and bring it back, and then we wouldn't hear much and lots of stuff. So just the inclusion, because the rooms that we're in, and while this is your day-to-day focus, folks come up to us all the time, and I just strongly encourage to keep that theme of those quarterly updates, all that sort of stuff. So certainly appreciate that. That's helpful, encouraging to see. You talked about the opportunities to leverage 10 gig. Yes, obviously, a differentiator. I'll say I'm surprised that hydrogen's up there, given everyone else is looking at it, but I sure could kick the tires. The Indigenous piece, obviously we've had some conversations on that. So thank you for continuing to run that down. There's some exciting things there. The elephant in the room, obviously, is that innovation park and where that's going to go. And I won't get into specifics here, but could you just speak a little bit to, if we're able to come through that and announce something there, just provide a bit of background on some of the work you guys are going to do or thinking about doing to help leverage that. Obviously, that if we can get that out, then the spinoff from that is pretty exciting. So just curious if you could give some information around, your thinking around how we could kind of use that plus the 10 gig to really drive things here, because the 7 of us up here think it's a game changer. We've told the public it's a game changer. We don't tell them what it is yet, but so we just need to make sure that it is actually the game changer that we hope. So just your thoughts around that.
I think once the whole thing's public, once it's moving, once we have our announcements, I think what you do is you target what's complementary. So the 10 gig allows the option for big business. And then beyond that, you go to your big project and what works around it, what doesn't, and it changes how you target it. So if the big project is one thing or another, you're going to want to put things around it that work with it, that don't conflict with it, and that can hopefully ride off the success of it. So I think what we would do is we would just look at what we're going to have there, what they're going to be bringing in, and then will those people need and what would benefit from being next to it, if that makes sense without saying
It
all the
doesn't.
details. Yeah.
Yeah, and putting you on a spot, like a tough question to answer without being able to get into the specifics. But yeah, I think, obviously in collaboration, you talked about your role with comms and, being ready to kind of spin that out, and that's crucial. And I guess I'll just stress, given we're short on time here, just stress the ask. Or I will say not on behalf of council, but certainly me, and I've heard it from others before around just including us in these conversations so that we know where it's going. We don't want to get in your work. We know what your job is, and Mike certainly reminds us what your job is versus ours, but it's the not knowing factor. And you know, we know that we assume that work is going on in the background, right? And you guys are working hard, but when we don't know it, that's when we start to drift. And so the more frequent the updates, when things come along, updating the mayor and through us, that's really appreciated. So yeah, great to have you. I was going to say on board, but you've been on board for a decent time now. And just love to see the actual strategy up here that we can point to and link back to our overall goals. So I'll leave it there, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk and Councillor Tessier, I see you have questions and we are past our time specific for 6:15. I'm wondering, can you stay around?
And come back, yeah.
We could hold your questions and go with the 6:15 and to make sure we don't get too out of whack here in terms of time. You okay with that? I take it you're okay. Councillor Van Newkirk, you're okay? You want to make them very quick? I can do that. Okay, are the members of the committee okay with that? All right. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Councillor Van Newkirk, then you'll be able to go home, so that's okay.
Sounds good. I just wanted to make a linkage to the one slide, the investment readiness slide in the green check mark on there. It said creating clear and consistent messaging around developing in Beaumont, including requirements and timelines to be completed in Q2. Just trying to read between the lines a little bit there. Some of the frustrations that come to council are from the folks who don't know or understand or can't navigate between the planning and development requirements and good submissions and all of that. I'm assuming this effort is looking to marry that a little bit and help those submissions along. Is that the intent?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate that 100,000%. Thank you.
Question. That was the quick question. So your answer was good. Thank you. Councillor Tessier.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment on kind of what Councillor Montcalf-Swain was saying and involving us. Just, we do get a lot of rumors, and I feel like I don't like not knowing when I feel like I should know, right? Like, you know, there was the rumors of co-op, storage facilities, what's going to happen with the French school when they move, right? So I'm looking to get more involved and understand what's happening. So we actually know, and trust me, that I believe that helps a lot for us and the residents to know kind of what's going on. So that's it. Thank you. See?
Oh, look at that. Thank you, Councillor Tessier. Mayor Daniluk, I
Just
would
very,
let you in for a quick one too.
thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, I'm looking forward to doing some strategic visits with you with businesses, not all of them, obviously, but strategic ones we're going to plan out and really get some good feedback from the business community and build that relationship. Retention is huge, and I believe that very firmly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll just get a quick word in saying that I'm really glad that you're going to be working with existing local businesses because I know there's a ton of them and the relationship needs to be more positive than it has been. And I appreciate that you have that as the top priority on your list there. So thank you for that. And thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going back then to item 4C. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to have a motion, don't we? Is there a member of committee, Councillor Tessier? Would you like to make that motion?
Thank you, Chair. I'll move that February 21st, 2023 Economic Development Departmental Overview be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members of committee, please vote. Declare the vote, and that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, it takes a team to make this work, doesn't it? All right, now we're moving to item 4C, which is Recreation, Parks and Culture Advisory Committee. So a member of the chair, I think, is coming up with Paul. Please introduce yourself to the committee and to the members that are listening, members of the public that are listening, and then proceed.
I'm gonna go first.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Paul Suter, Director of Recreation. Pleased to be here this evening with the chair of the committee. That's Mr. Philip Penrod. This is the second year on the committee for Philip, and he is the second year as the chair, just starting out, and I'm very pleased to work with him. And I'll turn over to him. He's got a brief presentation to update the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, Mr. Penrod. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks for having us for a bit of an update. And so if I can work the Look at this. So again, my name is Philip Penrod, Chair of the Rec Parks Culture and Advisory Committee, and this is our annual report. Hopefully we can speed through this. I don't see it taking the full 10 minutes, and if you have any questions for us, we'd love to answer them. It's been an honor and a privilege to sit with Councillors Van Newkirk and with Councillor Miller. And I want to also take the opportunity to highlight just what a joy it's been to work together with Paul Suter, but also Karen Gilbert in his office. If these two individuals are any indication of the overall level of professionalism and competency working for our city, then I think our city's in excellent hands. So it's been a pleasure. Yeah, so I don't imagine that we have to spend a lot of time talking about the mandate, but I will say that the committee had in the last year a fair amount of turnover, and I myself as a new member of the committee became chair. And so we did take several meetings to really just familiarize ourselves with the mandate and some of the operations of the city. And so we did have several opportunities to tour city facilities, including behind the scenes tours at the BSRC and the West Rec Center. And that was a great opportunity as we strive, and I'll kind of close with talking about our goals going forward, as we strive to be a better resource to the overall community. It's great to be able to have that kind of firsthand working knowledge of how our facilities run and be able to relay those again to our friends and neighbors. So we did kind of spend some time as a committee looking again and familiarizing ourselves with the Recreation Parks and Facilities Master Plan, our places and play, and the overall kind of terms and references of the committee. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the other members of the committee, Jenna Altroch, Jen Asplund, Martin Carnegie, Aaron McCall, Jeff Mills, and Grant Tolley. So we have an excellent representation, especially of the recreation community. We've got members that sit on several of the kind of larger recreational groups, especially for youth sports. But I would just highlight Grant Tolley has been an excellent member too, to round out our sense of what's happening culturally speaking in the community. I already pumped Paul's tires, so we'll move forward to that. So you can see we've kind of split our time into 4 major areas. Educating ourselves on things that are happening already in the community and where there's maybe some needs or opportunities. And that's where our counselors and our city staff have been so valuable to us, reporting things that are coming in and kind of leading us into some conversations. And then we have an opportunity to kind of feedback from our various demographics and circles. And then discussion points where either the city or council is looking for some specific feedback on specific items. Kind of ties into requests from council and specific presentations. So the presentations have been a highlight of the year, I would say, and something that we look to kind of engage in more and more intentionally, sort of more proactively. And so those were highlights of my year, and I believe for others on the committee, speaking to Beaumont Soccer, the Adult Slow Pitch League. That was maybe I can just use that as an opportunity to share the anecdote of where I think this committee can actually really function well, both for the residents, but also on behalf of council. So BASPA came to us about this time last year with some concerns about the allocation that they felt they would receive, and they were fairly proactive about that. And so they came, and I think for me, this was a great example of how everything could work. And I know that it doesn't always work this way, but BASPA came forward proactively to our committee. They made a presentation. The presentation wasn't just from their own perspective. They had taken the opportunity to kind of dig into the allocation plan and into the master plan. And so they made some very targeted suggestions for how they felt things could work better that would alleviate some of their concerns. And we were able to hear those. and then kind of forward them on. And I don't even know if it had to come all the way to council, because I think a lot of those suggestions, city staff were able to kind of assure BASPA that in fact, some of these things were already in process. So we were up for a review of the allocation process. And I was pleasantly surprised by how they just kind of made their case, and then they asked us, we formally recognized it, and then were able to pass it through and follow up on it with them. And they left fairly happy, I think. And so in my mind, if we could do more of that, maybe we get a little less of the kind of cynical comments that sometimes happen in a growing city like ours, and keep people productively and proactively engaged. Just move forward. Yeah, so that kind of brings me to 2023. And this is really just, again, working with Paul through the summer. Now that we feel like as a committee, we have our feet under us a little better, we'd really kind of like to set some goals and drive things forward. So what we're looking to do, and I wanted to tie this kind of directly to your council strategic plan. So you've got the 4 points, and I believe our best kind of meshing happens in the last 2. So our aspiration for a strong volunteer spirit and warm neighborly feeling, and our aspiration for empowered citizens who connect and collaborate with civic government. So that's really, especially in conversation with Paul and in conversation as a committee, that's where we see we really want to work, is reaching out to, so just a current example is reaching out to the Beaumont Youth Basketball Association, which we understand has had just meteoric growth over the past year or so, and reaching out to them proactively to say, what's working for you? Where are your challenges? Is there anything facility-wise or otherwise that's maybe limiting or hampering your growth? And that's just like reaching out over a coffee, quick call, and then inviting groups like that as one example to come kind of proactively to make a presentation at the committee. And then what we hope is that as folks do flag kind of opportunities or frustrations, that we can kind of help steer them in the right direction and work, rather than coming directly to make a council presentation, we can work with them so that when it does come time for something like that, if in fact it does, that's smooth and people come with all their I's dotted and their T's crossed. So we do, just to add 2 more things, want to make sure that we don't lose track of the culture aspect of our mandate. The rec and the parks are very kind of obvious and on people's minds, and I think community volunteers that work in those areas are already pretty savvy about what they need and how to get to where they want. Culture is a trickier one, and so we want to make sure that we don't lose track of that, and we continue to run down those opportunities to chat with folks, conscious at the same time that there are a couple other committees of council that do kind of work in that area, so not kind of steering into their lanes. And the third piece I just wanted to mention is volunteer challenges, and so that ties in obviously with one of your aspirations, and this is a piece that we're hoping as we work this year kind of with themed meetings month by month to invite speakers into those themes so we can hopefully uncover some synergies and things like that. So we know that that's on your minds and certainly on ours too, and we're hearing that from every pillar of our community. So the parks, the rec, the culture, is that all of our community organizations are struggling with engagement, and in some new ways coming out of this COVID time. So I'll finish there and happy to answer any questions that you might have for us.
Thank you very much. That was a well done presentation. Appreciate hearing it from your perspective. Are there members of committee who would like to ask any questions? Councillor Miller, first up. Everybody has questions. Councillor Miller, you're first.
Oh, now everyone's lights are on. Thank you, Mr. Penrod, for coming, and I like to see your passion on this community. It's really, or committee, sorry, and in the community. It's really nice and refreshing to have somebody that seems to be really engaged and pumped up about this this committee especially. I love it. I just have a question regarding the user groups and coming to you guys or coming to that committee to do the presentation. Like you said, BASPA came and they were able to gather information and have that conversation, and they left happy. Yeah, that's great. Like, I think that outcome is really positive, and I'm wondering if you could just kind of go explain to me again, are you suggesting that us as counselors perhaps reach out more to those user groups to encourage them to come to you? Or is that something you guys are ramping up to, because I do see maybe the lack of knowledge that some of these groups have, that they have this opportunity to come and talk to you guys so what do you think, like, what does that look like and what do you need from us? If you could just clarify.
Sure, thanks. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. It's something that we're wrapping up on our end, although it certainly wouldn't hurt in your conversations with folks if you just highlighted this as an opportunity. So we think of it as kind of a bit of a sandbox, is like one of those buzzwords these days, right? But we would hope to be a community resource where people can come that aren't exactly sure what is the master plan, what is my next step. And we can have some of those conversations and help build linkages for people and help them work on. And some people don't even, or some groups aren't even quite exactly clear on what they would want. So one example would be a complaint or a concern that came in through Paul's offices, or just around how much ice time is available for public skates, right? And the frustration sometimes on administration side is that a comment like that comes from a resident, and fair enough, like, we want to hear those comments, right? But it isn't always attached to, if we solve that one problem,
right,
all of the ripples that come out of that affect other groups, right? And so our committee would be a place where, whether it's in an official committee or in kind of those coffee side chats, that we can help kind of stretch people's imagination a little bit. And I would just add, this community, I think, committee was only struck in 2019, so we're still sort of finding feet. And I think we're at a moment this year where we'll start to move more into the direction that you were suggesting. And some of that is thanks to Paul's leadership too.
Mr. Suter, could you may clarify?
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent question, Councilor Miller. I get a lot of groups or individuals approaching the office with an idea or concern. And I see this committee evolving and getting stronger in that area, where we should be having them come to this committee, talk about the issue. We can help them, because they might just want to come to council first, but they haven't got a fully formed idea or even an ask necessarily, or what that means. And I think the role of this committee is key for that. But we have struggled with getting the word out. We've had numerous opportunities for presentations that have sort of not materialized.
Right.
So we have to do better with getting that out. So we would encourage council members, when you're talking with residents or groups or representing groups, have you talked to us? Have you been to this committee, made a presentation, and they can help you with that. So it's been, the master plan has a whole bunch of stuff in there that most people aren't familiar with. And, we use that as our go-to book every time. And there's definitely value in this committee, and it's going to just keep growing and evolving as we get more comfortable with it.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for sharing that. And, I can certainly do that in my conversations. And I just will add that I think it's really, it's beneficial for both sides, to know the ins and outs of the specific user groups, or any group that is involved in recreation, especially to make those educated decisions when projects come forward, future projects in the city. So I think it all sounds great, and great job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Miller. Councilor Van Niekerk.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll kind of springboard off of Mr. Suter's comments. The couple of things that I had brought to talk about was raising that community awareness of the committee. So I think you're bang on. As the committee gets its legs under it, directing more conversation there is going to help a lot. The big value of the committee is to be able to listen to the groups and maybe provide them with some current facts and the landscape, and provide a level of support to them to help them. If they come with a preconceived notion of some kind, that isn't founded in fact or process, then there's an ability at a committee level to course correct that and ultimately better prepare them for any future conversations they want to have. In absence of this committee, we may have a misinformed group sitting in front of council, and it just creates a lot of confusion and frustration for everyone, probably unnecessarily. So, you know, I know there's groups in the community, you know, today that are campaigning and looking for support for, you know, issue A and issue B and issue C. And I think as we encounter those as councillors and committee members in our travels, I think we should all direct those efforts to this committee, because I think those quicker, less formal, more discussion-oriented conversations in this committee probably are going to save a bunch of nonprofit volunteer work in the long run and ultimately frustration. Why did I put all this effort into this if this wasn't the direction? Well, you know, let's help redirect and guide some of that conversation to a good group. So thank you guys.
Before I move on to the next speaker, Councillor Monkhoff-Swain, you're up next. I just want to mention that we do have another time specific, which is really tight tonight. This is tough to chair this, but I think this is really important that we keep going on this particular topic, because we do have volunteers who have given their time to come tonight and to listen. So I'm wondering, I don't know who is up next. They're in the audience now. I don't know who it is. Okay. You are, sorry. Would you be okay if we're a little bit later? You're good? Okay, so it is just 6:40 now, which is your time specific, but it's going to be a little bit delayed. But thank you for that. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go on to Councillor Monkhoff-Swain.
Thank you, and good job as always, Chair. I guess the comment for me, just really impressed around the maturation of the committee. You know, when Steve brought this forward back in 2018 and then got it going in 2019, you know, it used to be that, you know, if you're a community group, rec, culture, you know, if you wanted something done, you'd just come and sit in front of council and hopefully not yell at us, but usually yell at us. And it didn't work very well, right? Because then we'd be like, oh, we'll talk to administration. And so where I see this and hearing some of those examples, right? You know, to be able to direct these community groups to come there. And sometimes you can solve those problems without having to come up here, right? So just really impressed with the maturation and obviously your leadership there and we're working with Paul and the team. I'm just really excited about how this is what a committee of council should look like in my view, right? There's so many of these things where, and you know, in the early days, and forgive me, but in the early days, people just sat on it because they, you know, maybe we could get better ice time or maybe we could get better field access, etc. Now seeing people come in and actually showing actual change and how we can do that it's supposed to take away time and pressure from this group here. And, you know, when things do rise up, yes, we're here. But I really see that as just a real credit to your leadership of the committee and obviously our two councillors who have pushed that. Obviously everyone's passionate about that in the community and something that we're really looking forward to continue to grow. So just really a thank you and just an acknowledgement. Got here much faster than I thought in under 3 years to get to this point. And now, as you've mentioned and Steve mentioned, it's about getting this message out to other groups to come in front of you and really bring this forward. So a great example for some of our other committees. So just a big thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Monkhoff-Swain. Councillor McCook.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation as well. You guys have a lot to discuss and a lot of planning in your committee. A lot of exciting things on the horizon. I like to hear about the potential expansion of the climbing wall. That was exciting to see. I also really appreciate that you touched on the culture aspect of this committee, as I think sometimes that can get lost in the rec side of it. So it was good to see that that's part of it, and that's part of your 2023 aspirations, is also to tie them into the city's culture, history, and reconciliation and EDI piece, and then tying it back to the strat plan. Do you have any insight into how you guys are going to go about kind of tackling that aspect?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last part?
Yeah, do you have any insight into how you're going to go about tackling the kind of culture, history, reconciliation, and EDI piece?
Yeah. Short answer is no.
No, that's okay.
It's really kind of
Honesty
holding
is
it
good.
to say we want to make sure that we don't miss this, but those are not the folks that are currently coming forward to us or that are kind of on our radar. So we're very much, I would love to hear more. I mean, short of just kind of pulling open the rec guide and flagging groups, and I'm not above doing that either. But just, I think part of the first step is really holding that up and saying, we don't want to lose this aspect, right? And so if you have suggestions, I'd love to hear them. And while I'm at it, another piece that we could use some help with is we still don't have a youth member. And so we've kind of made talked about a couple ideas for how we could recruit someone in that way. But if you have someone that's interested and talented on your radar, whether through the Chantal Brube Center or other circles, we'd love to hear about them.
Thank you. And yeah, I appreciate that honest answer. It's, like, and it's tough. It's a tough piece. And I think, did you want to add, Paul? Sorry? Yeah.
I was going to say, we have touched on the culture a few times. We've had a couple of presentations in the last couple of years, but it's definitely a work in progress there. It does fit into some of the other committee roles that we have and some of the other events, for example, and EDI is another good point that as that framework is developed and then finalized, what that means. And so it's just an evolution is the right answer that Philip made the right answer, but I'm just adding to that. It is an evolution. It's definitely, I think the themes, having the agenda, the themes and the culture is always mentioned, then it keeps reminding us to drive that as part of the agenda as well.
Yeah, perfect. No, I agree. And as I said, it's good that you guys have highlighted that, and it's still a priority. So I really appreciate that. And I think the volunteer part, one of my questions was about your volunteer discussions, and you kind of touched on that and how it's been a challenge across the community. And so I think it'll be good to kind of keep talking about that and keep getting the word out in regards to that and in regards to the need for volunteers as well. So I appreciate all the work you guys do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McCook. Councillor Tissy.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the great presentation, and thank you for your team for doing such great work for the community. Just want to chat with the St. Vital stairs that has intrigued me for the last little while since I've even been on council. And as we know, fitness is increasing for healthy living, and we're getting some outdoor fitness equipment. And we know in other areas of Edmonton, River Valley stairs are huge. Can you I guess further discuss that, or is that just on there for future discussions?
How long do we have, Madam Chair?
A long time.
Yeah, that was an item that was an idea that came forward, I think maybe 2 years ago. We never closed the book on it. It was just something that was talked about briefly, but never continued. But it's still highlighted in here, and the book's not closed is the short answer.
Oh, yeah.
There are some challenges with that particular location, being not that we own the property and what would be involved in if we were to look at something like that. But it was an idea that was floated about 2 years ago, and we haven't taken it up since.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's for sure something. If you're a runner or anything, we don't have that in our city. So that would be a great set of stairs.
If I could just kind of go around the horn to answer your question in a slightly backwards way. I was remiss in saying the St. Jacques Heritage House, speaking of culture, was one of our favorite meeting sites this year. And so we've traveled around the community a bit for our meetings. While there, I met someone who actually helped to plan the colonial neighborhood. And that struck a nerve with me as one of the Beaumontonians who loves to cross-country ski, because I hear that people would love another fitness opportunity in our city and would love to be able to cross-country ski in the winter there. And so to bring it back to the stairs, I think our way of coming at the cross-country skiing question is we're currently trying to identify a small group of residents that love to ski, get together, make sure they have some skin in the game so that we understand what their concern is exactly, and we'll work to coordinate them a little bit. And then we'll convene a meeting with the management of Colonial Golf Course and see what kind of information we can share and things like that. And then at that point, we might have something to actually bring forward to council. So I'd say in a similar way, if there's a small group of people in Beaumont that would love to see those stairs built and constructed, then we could kind of take a next step to talk to some of the property owners And then both of those examples, I think, would be kind of ideal examples of, again, how our committee could work, right? Take this idea that lives in the clouds and bring it down to earth, identify some of the practical challenges, work through some of those, direct the questions to admin that have to go to admin, and the questions that need to come to council, and everybody's happier process-wise in the long run.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate that approach. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tissy. Thank you. Good answer on that one too. I mean, nothing ever happens unless a group of people kind of work together to try to make it happen, right?
Yeah.
So again, good example of that. Mayor Dadlock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen. I had the privilege of serving on this committee in previous years with Councillor Van Newkirk, and now I'm very glad that Steve is continuing on for continuity purposes, as when the Councillor Miller is also assisting as well. So I'm very pleased the work that this committee has done and where it's going with it. And your presentation was spot on in so many ways, especially on the promotion of the committee and having groups come to it. But I'm very intrigued with the idea you're suggesting, if the committee has time, of course, time's everything, going out to actually visit user groups from the committee. That's a huge idea. And I think if you can make that work, that'd be a huge step forward for this community as well, to be involved with the community and know what the role really is. That idea to me is really intriguing. So yeah, if you can pull that off. I know it's going to come down to a matter of time again with various groups out there, but that idea to me is really intriguing for the future of the committee. If they can make that work, that would be a huge step forward. I think that no one else thought of before previously. So that's great. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I agree with you, Mayor. Councillor Miller, round two.
Yeah, not a question, just a comment regarding youth involvement on the committee. Have you made any social media posts, or is there anything that you would like us to share that we could maybe or get out there? Because I know there's so many youth that are involved in this in our city. So I can't see it being a huge issue to find somebody.
No, I would agree with you. I don't have anything handy to share at the moment. I know that part of the recruiting drive, the annual look for committee members, it is advertised. I think in this case, we're going to target a little more specifically potential candidates rather than just a broad advertisement. It hasn't worked in the past. So,
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Suter, on that question, is it only one youth or minimum of one youth?
one youth, yes.
Because I know that's often a showstopper for some, because they don't want to be the one that has to represent all. You know, nobody likes to be that one, I don't think so.
We could probably let two. If we could
I think
find
we
two.
have to think about that. And I don't know, council.
We'll just try to get one first, Madam Chair, and we'll go with the second one.
But it is hard sometimes to be the one, and to be the only young person to come might be a little intimidating. So you might think about that. Suggest another way. But again, on behalf of the committee, thank you for all the work you're doing and appreciate that very much. I think you've heard some really positive feedback here from council and from committee, and we'd like to continue to stay in touch. So please keep coming with your ideas and bring them forward to us. Great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And Councillor Van Newkirk, would you like to make the motion to and say anything else you want at the time? I just saw your name there.
Oh, no, I'm happy to make the motion that the February 21st, 2023 Recreation, Parks and Culture Advisory Committee report be received as information. Thank you.
Thank you. And please vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much again, gentlemen. All right, so now we are on the item 4D, website content audit update. There you are. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate that you allowed us to finish that particular item, and we didn't keep you too much longer, about 12 minutes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Good evening, Chair and committee members. I'm Mike Berezowski, the Director of Communications for the City of Beaumont. I am joined tonight with Kayla Beretta. She is the Vice President of Operations for Paperleaf. They are a website and mobile app development firm. And I also have Josh Reichert behind me in the audience. He is a member of my team on communications. And we're also joined remotely by Jennifer Balso-Hudak, the Director of Corporate Analytics and Technology for the City of Beaumont. So we're really excited to get to this. The website, as you know, big area of interest for us. We've discussed it before. So I wanted to get on with the presentation to talk about the project that we've been working on. So current status of the website, we moved to a platform called Civic Plus in 2016. Now, the platform is basically, it's the codes and technology that the site runs on. The past contract that we had, that we still have with Civic Plus includes some limited tech support for the website. We also have a decentralized governance model. So what that means is how information and images are created and maintained on the website. So currently we have like I said, decentralized model. We rely on the departments to make sure the pages are updated and relevant. And as a city has grown, this may have worked in the past, but it's become less effective. So just to talk a bit about, of course, our internal resources that we have, I mentioned Josh. Josh has done significant work on this project, and when he joined the city, he brought some significant website development experience with him. Some of his past projects include working as leading the development of the Cabela's Canada retail site. So a little bit of context about the website. In recent surveys, about 4 in 5 residents cite the website as their primary source of information about the city of Beaumont. We use Google Analytics to measure information about the website. So 2/3 of our visitors use a smartphone or tablet. So this is very critical because the site has to work in all formats. Now, the number of pages that we have on the website, as you can see, 790 or more. We have a few novels worth of content on our website. Again, I talked about the decentralized model. This is relevant. So we have some challenges with our website. I don't think that's a surprise. Content is a big challenge with our governance model. It's affected by if we have organizational or staff changes. We also depend on people whose skills don't really include writing for the web. And really, it's not reasonable to expect that. Civic Plus, as well as a platform and as an organization, the transition did not include any audit or work to clean up the content back in 2016. In fact, we found pages over that have been added over the years, or some that date back past to before 2016. We also have consistent feedback from the public, including recently with the digital master plan, that it's very hard to find information on our website. And there's some question about how reliable it is. Now, on the technology side, we also have some issues too. Civic Plus had some limitations to start with, even by 2016. And I'm sounding a bit negative about Civic Plus and the decision back then, but keep in mind, it was made in the context of the time. So now that said, though, they have fallen further behind since 2016. Now, we use an online tool to assess measures such as load times, how it functions on mobile phones or mobile devices, how the navigation works. As you can see, the performance score is 21 out of 100. That's incredibly poor. We also had a prolonged outage in the fall that lasted more than 8 hours, and that affected all Civic Plus clients across North America. That's about 10,000 municipalities. Finally, corporate analytics and technology started doing some penetration tests, and that has uncovered some security vulnerabilities with the website. Left unfixed, that can lead to information on the site being compromised. Now, CAD is working with Civic Plus, but there are still some ongoing issues. So that brings me to the content audit. So in 2022, the operating budget included funding for the content audit along with the digital master plan. Paperleaf was selected from a competitive RFP. That work started last year and is coming close to completion. The scope of that audit included a review of how information is organized on the website, how easy it is to read and to understand. So I'll hand it over to Kayla to speak a little bit more about the details, including the process, the findings, and the recommendations to date. We'll just make sure you speak into that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So just a little bit about Paperleaf. We are an Alberta-based website and software development firm and consultancy. We are user experience focused, which means we are primarily looking at how a user moves through the site and what a user might need. So for you guys, that's residents and ratepayers. We're ranked number 12 design firm in Canada by Clutch and among the top 100 agencies in Canada by Strategy Magazine. And we have completed similar work for the Canadian Automobile Association, WC Alberta, ACLA Utilities, and the Stollery Children's Hospital Foundations, along with many others. So the current work that we are working on with the city of Beaumont. The main problem here is, as Mike mentioned, that internal staff and residents have indicated that the current website is difficult to navigate and contains out-of-date and redundant information. So we have been hired to provide recommendations on how to provide an easier and more efficient way for residents and ratepayers to move through the site. And our current work is focused on navigation and content. So this work has so far included some activities I'll run through in the next few slides. This would be department consultations. We did a resident engagement piece called a top task survey, performed a content audit, and have been working through a new information architecture. Some pieces that are still in progress are content web style guide and content updates. So this fall, we met with 30 City of Beaumont employees over 8 sessions. These were really informative and kind of painted a good picture of the pain points and issues on the site from the city side. Overall, there's very strong alignment across all of the sessions about what the current issues are on the website and what the vision for the future might look like. The first kind of main thing that we found was that it is incredibly hard for people to find information on the website. Even your City of Beaumont team members have a hard time directing people to the right content, and several team members noted that they actually will guide people click by click through the site to find what they need. There's a general consensus across the departments that the website shouldn't be organized by department and rather by the needs of website visitors, which was great to see. There's pretty significant confusion about who owns the website and who owns content on the site. This is exacerbated by the sheer amount of content on the site, which, as Mike mentioned, contains a lot of outdated and inaccurate information today. A really clear example here is bylaws. So there's numerous areas on the site where a bylaw might be referenced, and if a bylaw changes, that content isn't always updated in all places, and it's not clear who's responsible for doing that everywhere. Overall, the content is not always easily accessible or easy to understand. So this means it might contain things like acronyms or internal language. And for all departments right now, content is considered to be a side of the desk activity. And they express a strong desire to have more assistance in determining what needs to be on the site and having a governance process. There was a shared sentiment that no one was really responsible for content and that departments don't have the knowledge, skills, or time to do it. We next moved into a resident and ratepayers engagement method called the top task survey. So this is a qualitative survey and it helps us basically determine what matters most to your site visitors and what information is most important to them. Participants in this case were given a list of 61 items, and they were asked to pick their top 5 and prioritize them. So on the left side here, I've pulled out the most important items that were selected by users. These are indicated in order of what they said was the most important. We know from analytics and other sources that they aren't the only things people come to the site for. These are just the things that they feel are the most important right now. So we use this information to see how the site should be structured to work best for users. There's a lot of other tasks that are selected as well, but we know that these 7 are the most important. So that's the sports and rec, the activities, parks and trails, events, waste collection, speed traps and photo radar, and programs. Most of the tasks fit into a few main categories that I've outlined on the right-hand side as well. So that's kind of this things to do, facilities, services, taxes and utilities, and your FCSS program. All right. We then did a content audit. So this was there's 890 pages. So we did a sample audit of 100 pages on the website. This took place in December of 2022. The biggest content issues here are style related. So when I talk about style, that's things like how the content's written, the consistency and readability of the content. In general, the more inconsistent content is on the site, the more cognitive load your users take on to understand what is happening before they can even digest the content. So when content is consistent, that comes across as professional, reliable, and makes it easier on your users to understand what to do, when, and where on the site. So this included things like consistency and styling of dates, time, phone numbers, just a general lack of web best practices. And what I mean by this is, for example, an underline on the web is usually indicates that something is a link. It's a pretty standard format. but on your site today, sometimes that is used for formatting or to create hierarchy. And things like PDFs and documents are rarely indicated as such. So there's a lot of variety in the different tones of voice and different levels of readability on the site. And most of your content today would probably benefit from some level of rewriting. So this would be, like I mentioned, applying web writing principles such as active voice, leading with the most important things, being direct and concise. And part of the work that we're doing right now with Mike's team is working on strong guidelines on that voice and tone to create that consistency moving forward. There's an issue with the current CMS removing accented characters from URL, which is an issue for SEO and also general reputation management. So an example of this is you guys have the Chantal Barabou Youth Center, and the URL right now says Chantal Brub Youth Center. So this creates issues where some of the content doesn't come across correctly. And I mentioned in terms of search engine optimization and how Google and Bing and things like that are finding those pages as well. In the Civic Plus CRM, it also includes page IDs in the URL, which creates a lost opportunity for further search engine optimization and limits the usage of URLs in marketing and social media. The last point I had here was just about the need to be able to set content to expire when it's no longer relevant. So some of the content here is alert type posts around street sweeping that would be happening the week of like May 1 to 7. It'll be outdated on May 8th. And some of that content never gets removed from the site. It will just stay there forever. And that there's a lot of inconsistency in labeling. So some parts of the site, for example, will use operations, infrastructure, and public works interchangeably as the same department. Okay, so moving on, this kind of informs the information architecture and how the site will be structured moving forward. So when I talk about information architecture, I'm talking about your site's navigation. So when it is styled and pretty, it kind of shows up on your site here in the top right. This is the primary way that individuals are going to be moving through your site. So going up to something like your Beaumont, that's a hover, seeing what's underneath and navigating to one of the levels of navigation below. Your site currently has 3 levels of navigation. So this means when I'm in one of those sections at the top, there's 2 additional layers of content, which is pretty common amount for municipal sites. This is kind of what that looks like abstracted just into the buckets of information. So right now under these headings, most of your content is split by department in a way that makes sense for departments and the internal structure of Beaumont, but not necessarily for residents. The view here is called primary navigation, and there's a lot of confusion about what the difference is between your Beaumont services and residents. So where you might go for what today. You guys also have an I want to section, which is considered a quick links menu. It was a very common style when in 2016 when the site is built. Right now, this IA is not really built for the user's needs and how someone would naturally navigate through the site. This is what we've proposed to move forward with. Some of you may have seen this because there was a tree test there's also a current survey in the form of a tree test that is out to test this navigation. So we really wanted to restructure the site to lead with user needs. So the website page structure is not a reflection of the current organizational structure. It's about taking that audience-centered approach to the page structure to provide streamlined paths to key actions for site visitors. So by letting the users better navigate through the site, they can hopefully more easily find the right information they need, which reduces pressure on individuals at the city to answer phone calls and email about publicly information, and reduces stress for your users to be able to find the right information. So this is the current proposed information architecture. It contains 2 components and has 2 visible levels of navigation for one. One is called a utility navigation. This is common direct actions that usually appear smaller above the primary nav. So this includes things like pay and apply, non-emergency concerns, public notices, and a calendar. And then we have a primary navigation. So this is the part that's kind of based on your top tasks, the survey that we went over, and the analytics. And these are the buckets that people are looking for on the site. And we've split them into recreational activities, programs and services, home and neighborhood, city projects and plans, business and economy, and government. So under recreation and activities would be items like activity registration, parks and trails, public and civic events. Under programs and services would be items related to FCSS and protective services. Home and neighborhood contains things like waste collection, taxes, street cleaning, fire safety, pets, etc. And city projects and plans is where those current projects and bid opportunities would live. Business and economy is things like business licensing, economic development, business directories, how you might start a business. And under government is where items like bylaw, history, budget, board and committees, mayor and council, and careers would live. We just closed a test today on this information architecture. So we'll be able to take that data and see how people have moved through this through a variety of scenarios, and might have some revisions on this moving forward from that data. So our current next steps in this project, we are revising that information architecture based on the testing results, as I mentioned. We're also currently working with the City of Beaumont on a web style guide. So this is how the team can write content for the web and create consistency moving forward. We'll be rewriting some key pages of content based on the content audit that we've done, and then working with the City of Beaumont team to implement those proposed changes as best as we can on the current CMS.
Well, thank you very much, Kayla. And the key part there was implement the changes as best as possible on the content management system that we have. So I do want to talk about some ongoing challenges that we have. We talked about how we're addressing the content and the navigation of the website. But there are some problems that are out of scope of the audit or that can't be resolved with the existing platform and the resources that we have. So Civic Plus, as I've said, made sense at the time, but it has fallen behind. It has a poor experience for users both on the front and on the back end behind the scenes. So that's how city employees use the site. The back end function is incredibly difficult to use. It is not intuitive. It has glitches. Kayla mentioned, setting content to expire. That's something that is quite restrictive on the current content management system and would help to be able to help us be able to keep the content up to date. So as a result, we will not be able to fully implement the audit recommendations. The navigation options that we do have are limited. There's also a lack of a staging environment, again, among some of the shortcomings of the current website. So a staging environment is basically a draft version of the website where we can test changes before we go live. And this is pretty important because if we're making significant changes to the website while it's live, we can bring down the website. And we've done this in the past. We've been able to recover thanks to Josh and his abilities. But it has been a standard for websites for years, and it's something that's lacking on the one that we have. Now, Paperleaf has provided us with an excellent roadmap to fix the content issues, and they're cleaning up some of the higher profile pages that we have. There's still many more pages to revise, and that will be an ongoing project. But right now, as she's also alluded to, it's also side of desk. So without the proper governance, these problems will reoccur with the content. And finally, Civic Plus is slow to respond to corporate analytics and technology, and they have a record of not keeping up with the best practices in the past. So, we've talked about the security vulnerabilities. It's important to remember that people use the internet to pay bills, apply for permits and licenses, and we need to make sure that their information is secure. So we do have some proposed solutions to this. The Service Experience Office in the proposed 2023 budget includes two solutions. First of all, the development of a new website platform. Now, Josh has developed a detailed project outline with modern standards for function, security, and accessibility. We're including as part of that the flexibility for the future too, so we can future-proof it as best as possible with websites. I mean, technology moves pretty fast, but the idea is we don't want to be here in a couple of years' time saying we need to do a new revamp of the website. We want to future-proof it as much as possible. The scope also would include more user-friendly experience regardless how people access the website. So currently, the website doesn't function all that well on mobile phone. If you've ever tried to use it, some tables don't work as well. Some information doesn't show up in a way that's easy to read. So if approved, a vendor would be selected through a competitive and public RFP process. Second is the inclusion of a full-time equivalent for a website coordinator position. At our request, MNP developed a website governance model when they were working on the digital master plan. The model that they have recommended centralizes oversight and management of content. This person would conduct regular content audits to make sure that information is updated. They would also use analytics to report on the site's performance and content and implement changes to enhance the site for citizens. Departments would still have a role in contributing information, but the coordinator would work to ensure that it's updated, written according to standards, and is relevant. Now, these two items are essential to fixing the most important source of information for our residents. The FDE also is very critical to continue the work that we've started with the audit and not let content quality slip again once it's revised. That does bring me to the end of the presentation. Kayla and I are happy to take any questions from the committee. As Josh is also on hand for more technical types of questions, and we also have Jennifer Bolsakudek as mentioned. If there's anything reaching into corporate analytics and technology or anything related to the service experience office.
Thank you both very much. That's a lot of information there, and I understand it has to be done, but I have to tell you, I've seen a lot of these presentations on website improvements, and everyone is going to be best, and it's never going to need to be up. No, can't. It's always going to need to be updated. So it's almost like we have to have the future in front of us is how much is this going to be? And nobody can ever tell us exactly what that's going to be. Anyway, that's my frustration. I'm finished now. I won't go any further than that. Councillor Sway, you can take it from there.
Yeah, I'll be brief. So start off 2 words. Thank you. We talk about economic development. We talk all these things. Talk about engagement with our community. As you mentioned, it's all through the website, and it's challenging. We don't need to get into that, but really looking forward to seeing where this comes from, where this goes. Sorry, I should say, and obviously some conversations coming up regarding budget, etc. And I just hope that we up here take the importance of this into consideration as we go through that, because it's such a significant part of our community that we hear frustrations all the time. So thanks for doing the detailed look at it. Looking forward and glad we've got some experience on this development in the background. So yeah, just thank you, and we got to get going here. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Moncasway. Councillor Tessier.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. 100% agree. We need a new website. We've known that for a while. We're going to obviously get into it during budget, but last budget we tried it, and we gave, I don't know how much it was, 250,000 ish, and that was supposed to revamp the website, and nothing happened. So
maybe that's that as a question. Maybe he can give you an update on that. I saw the look on his face when you said that. Do you want to rephrase that to a question?
Sure. Question mark.
If I may, actually, there was 45,000 in the budget, in the operating budget 2022, and that was for the content audit. I don't recall 250,000 was the digital master plan.
That number might be wrong, but if it's 45,000, then yeah, that's not going to do much for the website. I'll have to look back, but
that's what
that's to hire this the consultant.
Okay, then I have to confirm, but I guarantee something else was in there for approximately that cost for what we were told was for the website. So we
can certainly look back into it. But your point is, well, I was a little bit of my history here is that we've spent a lot of money over the past number of years. I don't know how many either, and we keep thinking we're getting a new website, and it never seems to get there. So I'm really hopeful this is going to be the one. But
I think Director Bolsakudek may be jumping in.
Jennifer, would you like to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
The 250,000, I think Councillor Tessier is referring to is the technology capital replacement. That might be that. The only, and since I've been here since 2019, the only dollar amount that we put forward was the 170,000, and of that 170,000, 45 was allocated to the website content audit, and the other was for the digital master plan. So I can check back as well to see where you're thinking the 250 came from, but I don't recall that. There was the only upgrade that was done was the Economic Development Seed website for their own use. That was the only work we had done there.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I remember a specific conversation asking if it's going towards the website and
That, the going
And
towards
I
the
think-
website for the Service Experience Office?
from 2022's budget. But from what I understand, it was supposed to be for the website, but then it actually couldn't actually build the website because the background and the work behind the website needed a total revamp anyway. So then we actually couldn't get a real revamp of the visual that would go towards the residents' experiences, from what I understand.
Okay, well, Councillor Tessier, I think your point is let's get it done.
Yeah.
Either way, yeah, 100%. It's like, it's needed. I have a tough time. The cost is excessive, right? With the increase of FTEs and the cost. And that's just something that, you know, I struggle with right now, what's needed more and where we sit with that, but that'll be time for budget. So thank you. This was laid out very well. So I appreciate that.
And I think the conversation at budget time is going to be robust as well in terms of trying to get our heads around what is actually absolutely necessary, what can we put off to another year, et cetera, but that'll be all coming to a theater near you. Mayor Danlock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Great content too, but no surprises in the content either of the report. So that's a good thing. In a way, we're expecting what you basically told us. At least I was anyhow. I won't speak for my council members when I say that, but I think it's a pretty common theme. One quick question, just an observation. The report in the early presentation said 801,000 visits in the last year. Is that it's a pretty big number. Is that something, given the size of our city, that's a pretty average number of visitations? Is that something you're experiencing that's actually on the high side? Contending which contributes to people's frustration because we're having more than average people visiting our site, or that's actually low compared to other. Give me an idea how that is, that number is relevant, or
Josh, would you like to
Josh,
come up
is that
and
your
speak
shot,
to us?
Josh? I mean, it sounds like a lot, and it probably is, but
On
I'm
the
wondering if
hot
that's
seat with the
something we
rest of
should
them?
be
Yeah.
expecting with our size of cities, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, thank you, Madam Chair and Mayor and Council. Yeah, to kind of answer your question there, 801,000 or 802,000 of visits. Keep in mind, there is an average of amount of pages that each individual is obviously looking at when they come onto the website. So the 802,000, taking to correlation, there could be one person who's looking at a page maybe 20, 25 times, depending on how many times they go to the site. So that's not 800,000 visitors. That's 800,000 times a page has been viewed or the website has been viewed and navigated.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it gives me an idea. So based on your experience, we're 22,000 people. Is that something in the realm of the ballpark average? Just an idea on utilization, because
Yeah, I was gonna say from a minute. Yeah.
just your experience, ballpark idea, because it all goes to utilization and how our specific, what's it being used and how it's being prioritized.
Yeah, for relatively urban municipalities, this is probably pretty normal. We see like the more rural a municipality gets, the more that changes, just there's different preferences in how people access the site. There is lost opportunity here because your mobile experience isn't great. So we measure something called a bounce rate on the site, and that's how many people come to the site and leave right away. And your mobile bounce rate is higher than we would like to see typically. So I still think there's opportunity for this to grow, and it probably would with the new site, especially on that mobile and tablet experience. But this is pretty in line with a municipality of your size that's a little bit more urban.
So when you say a bounce rate, it's like someone's going to the website thinking this is not good, I'm out. Is that the
Yeah.
bounce rate kind of simplistic?
basically
Yes,
like-
that's the gist of it.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. It's also if someone only viewed one page and left, so it's not a perfect number. But generally we see if people aren't moving around the site as much, then the bounce rate will be higher.
Thank you.
Also, just one more thing to add to that as well. We have a very robust communication strategy that we put into place for a lot of initiatives that we do for the city. So the more that we continue to push that content out, we've already seen an uptick over the last 2 years on how many people are driving to the website. So when Kayla mentions that average going up, it's not even so much a will it go up? It's no, it will. Yeah, it's a matter of when. So that's why a new website experience is extremely important, because we're just going to continuously be driving those users to the website more and more.
Thank you very much. That's a good answer. Councillor McCook.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to highlight that while spending a lot of money on the website may seem like a lot, I think when we talk about cybersecurity risks and things like that, all entities are at greater risk right now of that. I think it's really important that and prudent of us to do a really good job here to ensure we're putting forward the safest and most user-friendly website that we can. So a performance score of 21 out of 100 is pretty terrible. So definitely time to be diving into this. One of my questions was around once the website was updated, who would be responsible for the ongoing maintenance? And you addressed that with the coordinator position. Would that position also be looking at kind of the aspect of how some of our content is not really written for web and stuff like that? Would that position address that part?
Absolutely. Paperleaf is working on a style guide that would address how content is written. And once we do have a new platform too, how content flows on a page too. So for example, we don't have accordion menus, we only have tabs, which is not a very common way to add additional information.
Right.
It's a lot harder for when you have a lot of information for one area, you can't just put it all on one page. So you have accordion tabs that open up. These are functions that we don't currently have on our website. And so we would have guidelines for that too. And so the website coordinator would be responsible for making sure that everything is done. First of all, to go back through content, but also as content is added, making sure that it is relevant and written for that purpose and according to the style guidelines.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And you probably knew this question was coming. What's kind of the timeline for all this?
I guess it depends on approval. Website coordinator, upon if approved, we would move pretty quickly with that recruitment. Realistically, like we haven't scoped out yet, once the audit is fully completed, but we're looking at probably a couple of years of website content audit, like reviews, because just the sheer volume of content that we have and the need to work with the departments with that and consult with them to make sure, because we're not technical experts, we need to draw upon, say, planning and development to make sure that the information is correct, but also make sure that it's written for the web. In terms of the web, a new website platform, again, dependent on that, and bearing in mind that we would get a late start this year, probably anywhere from 12 to 18 months.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCook. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Yeah, just a comment and then a question. Around cybersecurity. I was just at a conference recently and one of the keynote speakers was about cybersecurity and my eyes were opened. I had no idea the risk associated with cybersecurity and how prolific websites can be to be opening those doors and gateways to attacks. It's completely crazy. So I look forward to figuring out how we lock that up a little bit. A question around clicks and navigation. I think on a rewrite here or a rewrite or a redo, what would be the target or goal when it comes to the number of clicks in an ideal case an individual would do to find the piece of information they're looking for?
Generally, the number of clicks is less important than if the path makes sense.
Less than what, sorry?
Less important than if the path makes sense and how the user gets there. So what we aim for is for a logical flow of how someone might get to the information that they need. And you want pages that are really searchable and friendly, because there's a great likelihood that people will just type in like skating fees Beaumont and into Google instead of rather actually going to your site and looking for that. So searchable content and making sure the path to get there is the ideal things that you want to focus on. For municipal sites, they usually say like 3 clicks is what you want to aim for at max. But like I said, if the path to get there makes sense, then it's fine for you to have more than that. It's just about, does this make sense for the user in their journey and how they actually get to that content?
Yeah, and my subsequent piece on that was also going to speak to like the need for searchability, right? Because right now when you try to string together what you think are 3 keywords, you might end up on Disney's website, right? So, yeah. So, okay,
yeah,
thank you.
But I'm just sorry to expand on that a little bit. Part of the issue with the site today is around accessibility as well. So the way that the pages are structured and some of the search engine optimization things have the same benefits for someone who's potentially using a screen reader on your site. So the site today isn't super accessible for people that are experiencing that in different ways. And that will help both the audience that needs it and that don't need it today.
Yeah, and case in point is type a search versus use a verbal search, and you actually get two different response paths, right?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The topic just gets bigger and bigger, and every time someone asks a question, I come up with another thought. But I think people probably want to move along here. No more questions from members of the committee. Thank you very much. It's a big job indeed, and we're looking forward to seeing great things, we hope. Is there a member of the committee willing to make a motion to approve this for information? Mayor Daniluk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move that the February 21st, 2023 website content audit be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Members of the committee, please vote. And I declare that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. So if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I am, we've done all of the business and we're moving to council inquiries. Correct? All right. Okey-doke. Are there any members of the committee that have any inquiries for tonight? Oops, don't see any. Oh, yes, I do. Mayor Daniluk.
Actually, Madam Chair, thank you. I don't have an inquiry, but before you adjourn the meeting, I want to congratulate you as Deputy Mayor. You have finished your term of 8 months and you have navigated some very challenging committee of the whole meetings. And I want to say thank you on behalf of myself, council, administration. It's been a quick 8 months.
Very quick.
And we begin with Councilman Newkirk next month, for the next 8 months as Deputy Mayor, and he'll take over the committee of the whole meeting. So thank you for your work on the committee of the whole. They were very challenging sometimes and you handled them very well. So thank you.
You're not
on
an
behalf of
easy
the
group,
council.
I have to say that. You're not an
Sometimes
easy
it
group,
can be
but-
entertaining.
But you're fun. Well, yeah, I don't know who to, No, thank you very much. Appreciate
Well
the
done.
cooperation. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for your kind words. All right, then I will declare the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.